Hey there, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here on Wave Now. I'm Myra Ansari. Here with me today is Cindy Crawford. She is the executive director of Sycamore Farm at Sycamore Farm, Kentucky. And today we are talking about January, the month we are in, and why it is so important because it is National Human Trafficking Awareness Month. And we wanted to talk about this. You were on Wave Country last week, and I enjoyed our conversation so much that I wanted Cindy to come back. And you're also going to catch her here on Wave News at noon, around 12:15 or so, to talk about Sycamore Farms, what they do here in our community, how they help and give back, and then also the importance of talking about human trafficking, because this is something we need to know as a community, how to spot, how to identify, and know the resources that are out there. Right, Cindy?
Absolutely. I think people just get caught up in the myths and what they have been taught their whole life. Like it only happens overseas, or it only happens to undocumented people.
Or only in the movies.
Or only in the movies,
Yeah.
or it only looks like a kidnapping, or it's only this or that. And so the reality is there's a lot of different things that can happen that can cause somebody to be in a trafficking situation.
Tell us about Sycamore Farm, Kentucky. How did it come about? What you do there? What you want folks to know about today?
Oh, I love it. Thank you. Sycamore Farm is my heartbeat. It started, the dream of Sycamore Farm started well over 10 years ago, but we started officially in 2019, and the mission behind it is to help women get out of sex trafficking for good. And that's a very small statement, but there's a lot of things that have to happen to make that happen. So we wanted to operate a residential home for women to come that had been sex trafficked or sexually exploited, to get all of the things that they need to be able to heal from that trauma, but also move forward in a healthy way and be self-sustaining adults. Not just live the life that they were given, but live the life that they want to live.
What is human trafficking? I know this may sound like a silly question, Cindy, but what does it typically look like?
Well, it looks like abuse. It looks like a vulnerable person being taken advantage of. It looks like a homeless person. It looks like a door-to-door salesman. It looks like panhandlers. There's so many different things that somebody can get caught up in, and it can be trafficking. It not always is, but it can be. So what I like to tell people is that generally it's somebody who has a vulnerability, a need, a great need, and there's somebody that's willing to exploit them to fill that need, basically. So that can be a drug, it can be food, it can be a place to sleep at night, it can be love, it can be a job, it can be anything. So whatever that need is, there's somebody out there that's willing to fill that need, but you're going to have to do this in return. And now that doesn't sound like a normal exchange for you and me, right? Because we know what the law says about getting a job. You get minimum wage, and you have to have so many breaks.
You have to be a certain age, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is not happening when it comes to trafficking. The definition of human trafficking is when a person compels another person using force, fraud, or coercion to perform a labor act or a commercial sex act. And that's a mouthful, but in short, it just means somebody that is lied to, forced by various ways, or they're tricked, or they're threatened. And you can threaten to kill that person, to hurt that person. You can threaten the legal system and say, oh, well, you did this, and so now I'm going to call the police. So you got to do what I say. Or threaten their legal status if they're not legal documented, or maybe they are legal documented and somebody says they have their documents in their hands and they don't have it anymore. So now they have no proof that they're legal. So they can take advantage of them that way too.
The person on the other end is typically very manipulative in that aspect.
Yes.
And the victim typically feels like there is no way out of this situation. Most people will say, well, why didn't she or he run? Why didn't they just try to get away? Why didn't they say no? But that's not always the possibility, because the mental and the physical constraints sometimes with stuff like this.
Well, think about it this way. If you have, how long have you been hungry?
I just ate, so not very long.
Like what's the longest you've ever
Oh gosh, like a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So say you haven't eaten in 3 or 4 days. Say you don't have any money to get any food or a support system to help you. You don't have an aunt or a friend or somebody to call.
You're all alone.
You're all alone. Or maybe you do have a friend, but they want to make you do something in order to get that food. And so if you've only been hungry for, 3 or 4 days and you're pretty desperate for food, then there is a good chance that you're going to be able to be taken advantage of for that.
Is it typically children? Can it be adults? What do we normally see?
It typically starts in childhood.
Okay.
And I say that because children are the most vulnerable. And I've been doing some studying on familial trafficking, and that is 91% of sex trafficked victims were sexually abused as children. 91%. And I think the statistic is over 70% that they are familiar people. So there's familiar people, which is anyone that you trust. Anyone you know.
It could be a neighbor. It could be a family member. It could be anyone.
Yes. And familial trafficking is somebody in the family, somebody like a stepdad or even a dad or a mom. And, one of the statistics that was most alarming to me was one of the highest traffickers in familiar trafficking is the mother.
Really?
The highest reasoning is drugs.
Oh my goodness.
I know, it's unbelievable, but I've met so many survivors and this is the case. They've been sexually abused by mom, and they've been trafficked by mom.
That's heartbreaking.
It is. I mean, of all the people you would think that wouldn't be the mom.
Yeah, that kind of just, when you said that got me because, but it unfortunately makes sense when you throw in the equation of there could be drug involvement, there could be an addiction problem.
What is happening is they are allowing access to their children for drugs or for money. Money is the second reason, but drugs is usually the first.
And tell me, Cindy, why you got involved with Sycamore Farm and why this is so important to you.
First of all, this goes way back. It really goes way back. And I don't think I realized my involvement in this field, but I also didn't, when I first got started over 10 years ago, I wanted to help women and help them get out for good and just show them that, it doesn't have to be your identity. There are resources out there. But along the way, I've done a lot of research and I've just educated myself trying to figure out who's doing what, where my place really is in this fight and where I want to fit in. But it just kept coming back to the aftercare because it just wasn't there. You can find somebody that needs help, but what do you do with them? Most of them end up in a domestic violence shelter, which doesn't directly serve women with the complex trauma of sex trafficking.
Sure.
Like I said, most of them, it starts in childhood. So they've had years of abuse. This isn't just a relationship gone bad. This is years of abuse where it's been normal for so long. So finding the right kind of service to provide these people, because I serve women, but it's all across the board, men and women, boys and girls, documented and undocumented, we could go on. But just wanting to help, wanting to really find a way to help them in a way that is going to be long-term and effective. And, there's so many agencies out there that are doing such great work. And we need everybody. We need everybody to do their part. But there is one side of it that is just starting to make its way. It's been on the scene, but it's very small and it's been slow going, but aftercare is huge. So being able to provide aftercare for these women is just a great way to help them, but it's also a lot of work.
Sure.
But when I started serving this population, that was the biggest disconnect. We could serve them, we could love them, we could offer resources, but they were still having to go back to their families and their life and do what needed to be done to survive. And so I wanted to be able to offer a place where they could let go of that and all the stressors in their life that cause them to continue these bad choices and this lifestyle, so that they could really focus on the healing and not have to worry about food or a place to live or a warm bed or having clean clothes. We didn't want them to have to worry about that. So that's where this came from.
So talk to me more, Cindy, about when a woman comes to you and says, I've been a victim of sex trafficking. What do you do? How do you help them?
The most important thing is to ask questions. And I don't mean ask them to unpack their story. That is not what I mean. I mean, ask them questions about what do they want? How did you get in this situation right now? What made you want to call me? And so you really want to unpack the reasoning behind it, because a lot of victims don't realize they're victims, but also to come to our program, they really need to be ready to make that change. And just like drug addiction or any other addiction, it takes several tries before they can really kind of hold on to that, to be clean or to really move on in a healthy way. But they have to want it. And this is really no different because, like I said, they're used to it. They've been doing it for a long time. They're used to manipulating. They're used to, a lot of them are addicts. A lot of them have mental illness, some mental illness anyway. And they just don't know what healthy looks like. They don't know how to trust. They don't know what hope is.
They're desensitized to the things that are normal to so many of us.
Absolutely.
Because they've been traumatized. It's trauma.
Yeah, it's absolutely trauma. And we call it complex trauma because this is trauma that's happening over and over again. And so your brain sees that as normal. And so you stop becoming so sensitive to it. Like you said, you get desensitized to it. If somebody hits you in the face one time, you're going to be like, what happened? Oh my gosh, that hurt. But if they hit you over and over and over and over and over again, like every day,
it becomes the norm.
You're like, oh, I'm just going to get hit today. I'm going to get hit today. It's just going to happen. And you just learn to accept it. And then your body, your mind, mentally, you start to try to protect yourself. So that's where we get into the mental illnesses like disassociation and multiple personalities. Just different things happen because your brain's trying to protect yourself, especially when this happens in childhood.
So we often hear about sex trafficking, and Cindy and I talked about this when she was on Wave Country, but about just how this is not just something that we deal with during Derby. It's not something that we just deal with during the farm machinery show. We've done stories where, and I don't know, forgive me for not remembering this, but there's an organization that goes and plays soap bars in hotel, motel bathrooms. So if someone is a victim, that they know that they can get help.
Yes.
So this is not just it happens once or twice a year. This is happening every day, every hour, every second, every minute.
Yes.
So it's not just unique to a certain time.
Right. Yeah, it happens all the time. And I think that is why you don't see a lot of advocates out on Derby going, stop the madness. It's really something that happens all the time. And we don't want people to get caught up in the fact that, or the thought that it does only happen during these times of the year, but it happens around. The Farm Machinery Show is actually the #1 in Kentucky for this activity, the influx, and then the Derby, of course, but any kind of big sporting event, any kind of event that brings in a lot of people, that's a lot of money, and there's a lot of demand. I mean, it just is. If there was no demand, it wouldn't be happening.
Maybe is it more of folks are coming into town looking for a little fun and they're not close to home, and this is a perfect opportunity to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it. And one of the reasons I think the Farm Machinery Show is so big is that, most of the people that come to that are probably men. It's a farm machinery show. Not saying that women don't do that, because I was a tomboy. I did all that stuff, but still, I would think it's probably a lot more men that come to that. And I will tell you that these strip clubs and spas, they pay extra money for the cab companies to bring people to their business.
What?
Yeah, they will. They will give them a little extra incentive. When somebody gets off a plane or when somebody says, hey, take me to the strip club, they'll bring them to their strip club because they're, they have different cab companies that do, not necessarily the cab company.
Sure, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
So, but that puts it into perspective, Cindy, just how tangled this web is.
Very tangled.
It's very deep rooted. It's
Mhm.
not just you nip it in the bud here. There's vines of it going in every direction.
Well, look at it this way. Backpage.com. I think we've all heard of it now because it's no longer. But what happened was it was a Pornhub kind of thing where there was a lot of sexual activity. There was a lot of selling of sex visually on there. But it got pulled down. And when it got pulled down, there was 100 more that popped up in different areas. So we can nip it here. We can make leadway here. We can change laws. We can take this website down. We can put all kinds of places, safeguards in place, but it's just going to keep happening because the demand is there. So in my opinion, the only way to really get in front of it is to teach these vulnerable, the kids, what's happening and how it's happening and how they can protect themselves.
How do we spot human trafficking? How do we know, like if I'm out in the community, do we know what it looks like? Can I identify it?
You could. We do training, and when I do the training, I ask people to just dismiss everything they think they know about human trafficking, so that we can really get to the heart of it, and you can come with a fresh view or a perspective. But really, it looks like a homeless person. Like literally, it looks like you and me. It could be any of us. It could be somebody that's well put together, or it could be somebody that's disheveled. So you just don't know. Once you learn, once I do the training, a lot of people, like I show pictures of what traffickers look like convicted traffickers in Kentucky. And I give the scenario. They were looking for someone on Grindr, the app, or they were looking for somebody on a video game or online, and they were pretending to be a boyfriend or girlfriend. Just different scenarios where we have seen actual situations. But what it really looks like is you just have to really kind of get to know somebody. And that's what I try to tell people, is that you can't just go to somebody and say, hey, are you okay? Do you need help? Because I've done that. It doesn't work. But it's also not safe.
Yeah.
So, I have no fear of anything. But the truth is, it's not safe, because the trafficker, their pimp, their predator could be anywhere around them. Also, they don't realize they're being trafficked. They don't realize they're in this situation.
Silly question. So would a pimp prostitute sort of situation be considered sex trafficking, human trafficking?
Oh, yeah. Because the pimp, we call them a pimp. She calls him daddy, or she calls him boyfriend, or whatever she's calling him. And he may have other girlfriends, and that's just the family, so it's not really cut and dry. We have to get out of this mindset that people wouldn't do that.
I noticed that you used comfortable terms, daddy or family.
Oh yeah. And there's a reason for that.
Yes, why it's interesting.
Yeah.
That's how it's portrayed.
A lot of them are, and it's really sad, but we have to see the world through their eyes. They've been abused since childhood. They've been abused since, maybe a teenager. Maybe they ran away and they met this guy who was their boyfriend, and calling him daddy is what he wants. And, I don't know. I mean, it's just, there's so many things that overlap, and there's so many just variables that we're just really starting. I mean, there are other agencies that may know everything, but I don't. I'm starting to really understand how deep this really goes.
Yes. And I know that you can't name names or talk too specifically, but do you mind sharing, Cindy, just some stories of women, just generic stories of women who came to you, what they went through in life and where they're now?
I had... Okay, so years ago, I mentored a woman that was and after, getting to know her, I mentored her for probably 2 years, and I still know her. I still talk to her. She was molested by her mom. She was addicted to porn because she was made to watch it. She was kidnapped and, of course, raped and abused by some people. And I can't even remember how she got out, but she did get out. But then, she ended up, dating this guy who was her pimp. Ended up, I don't think she married him, but she was with him for a long time. He was abusing her, and her son, her oldest son, got tired of watching her get abused, and so he, tried to take action, and she ended up losing her kids because there were drugs involved, and he was abusive, and it all came out, and so she lost her kids. He went and done some time, and I think she had to do some time. I mean, it was just a big mess.
Yeah.
And just all look at her past, and these.
Something that sounds like you cannot escape it, right? It's
just life.
Deep.
It's
so,
life.
yeah.
Yeah.
And how's she now?
She's a lot better. She did go to jail. I lost track of her for a few years, and I was like, oh my gosh, I thought she died. I thought she was killed or OD'd. But she found me on Facebook, and I was like, oh my gosh, I thought you were dead. I'm so glad you're alive.
Yeah.
But she still struggles. I don't get to talk to her near as much because I have Sycamore Farm, and I'm trying to make that work. But she's on her own. She has her own apartment. She has her kids back.
Good.
She's doing a lot better.
And the reason I asked you that is because I want, if there's someone out there right now that you can't change it, you can turn things around.
Yeah.
You can't, it's hard to do it by yourself.
For sure. Absolutely.
And that's why we want you to know about Sycamore Farms. I'm going to go on your website right now. And you have a lot of interesting resources out here on your website to kind of walk people through, just telling people just how alarming some of the statistics are. And my heart just sunk when I was reading some of them, and to know how widespread this can be, how and I've said deep a couple times because I don't know how else to kind of explain it.
Yeah, there's so many, like I said, there's so many facets that come to play in this scenario. So it may not start as trafficking. It may start as abuse. It may start as a domestic violence situation. And every, you'll see this in law enforcement will see this, and I know they have seen it, but they've also been tainted that, and to believe that if they're doing this and they want to do it. And I think that's a lot of our problems is they're doing this, they must be okay with it. If it was that bad, why wouldn't they leave? But also, you have medical field; they see it, and I'll give you a few examples of what it may look like, and it's not like the telltale sign, but it is a red flag. So if you are in a situation where you're talking to somebody and there's another person with them, and you ask them a question and they're doing all the answering, they're not letting this person speak, that's a red flag. If they will not let that person be alone, if they won't leave their side, that's a red flag. They may have multiple hotel keys. That's a red flag. They may not know where they're at, like the state. They may not, they may be lying about their age. That's a red flag. So there's all kinds of different things. And the only way, I believe, to truly get them to get them to the hope, get them to the resources is to build that trust. And sometimes it takes time. It usually takes a lot of time because they don't trust anybody, right? Sure. And also they have this person over here controlling them. And I mean, they wouldn't see it that way, but they are controlling them. So if they have, if they're pulling all the strings and you're saying, I can help you, here's my number, I want to help you. Even if you know for sure, even if she says, I'm being trafficked, I need help, getting out is not easy. And it's not going to happen the way you think it's going to happen. It's going to take a lot of time and a lot of patience. And I mean, really, you can't make it about you or how you would react to this situation. Like, he's beating you. Don't you want to leave? Well, it's not that simple. You don't know what he's threatening her with. You don't know if she has children at home in somebody else's care that he has control over. And you don't know if he knows where her family lives. You don't know any of those things. So we can't assume any of that stuff. We really have to just try to talk to them and build that trust up slowly, especially when you're talking to like school age kids. They don't really understand how bad it is. Like, it's harder for me to reach women that are younger because they haven't quite reached rock bottom yet. They're still kind of feel like they're in control. They're still in that naive, oh, I'm okay. He still loves me. And they're in that mindset. It's easier for me when they're older women, And that's typically the women that come to the house that they are anywhere from 30 to 50 years old, and they're done. They're like, I'm over this. I'm really sick of it. They're finally ready to start moving forward.
And unfortunately, 30 to 50, we don't want people to have to wait that long.
No, we don't. We don't. And I'm 50. I can't even, 51, but I can't even imagine starting my life over right now.
Yeah,
like, how hard would it be?
Yeah.
How hard would that be?
Where to find a job?
Oh, yeah.
Where to find a home?
They don't have an ID. They don't have their driver's license. They don't have a birth certificate. Most of them don't have insurance. I mean, we can get all those things, but they don't have any way to get it. They don't have an address.
Transportation.
They don't have transportation. They don't have, they don't have a documentation that says where they don't have, like, you have to have an address with your name on it, like a letter or something, to get your ID, to prove that you're a citizen of the United States, but also of that state. So it takes that kind of support.
Yeah.
Just as simple as that.
Okay. So I asked you this earlier when you were on TV with us, but I want you to speak to that person that's out there, that's watching this today, that happens to be on social media, that is being trafficked.
Yeah.
I want you to talk to them.
Okay. Where's the camera?
Right there, looking right at it. I'm going to put it on you so you can talk to that person.
I want you to know that there is hope out there. We know that you're in a dangerous situation. We know that it's not easy, but please start taking those first steps. Please start finding people you can trust. You can email me at intake@sycamorefarmky.org. Just send me an email and just say, hey, it's me, or give me your name, or give me a letter that is part of your name. And we can start the conversation right there. And slowly but surely, we can start finding new resources, get your help. I have an emergency safe house for women that are trying to get out. And we can get you there. I only work with one woman at a time because it is a lot. I do have a client in the house right now, but we will get you the resources you need. And if I can't help you, I'll find someone who can.
Do you often get law enforcement involved, or are most women scared of law enforcement, or is it just you and them working through this?
Yeah, they are typically not for law enforcement, and for good reason. They don't have any control, period. Like, even without law enforcement. So when law enforcement gets on the scene, and they've been, I'm not going to lie, everybody can be a trafficker. Law enforcement is no different. Clergymen, and, teachers, coaches, parents, cousins, brothers, sisters. We've talked about all of that. So, I'm not going to pretend that it wouldn't be them. And I've heard horror stories about everyone. So I don't put it past anyone. And we just have to make sure that they, that they're safe and they have some kind of choice.
If folks are watching this, I have put a link in our feed that we have to Sycamore Farm, Kentucky. Do you all need help? Can people can help you out with supplies or monetary donations to keep your mission going?
Yeah, of course. We always need money. I tell people that. Always need money. Monthly donors are huge. It helps us plan for the future. But we also need volunteers. Would love to have board members. We need all kinds of support in all kinds of different ways. And different times, we need more things than others. So just getting involved. Sign up for our newsletter. You can go on our website and sign up for our newsletter. And that way you can keep in the know of what we're doing monthly. And that way, if something is come up that we need, we had a fence built around our emergency house. And so we had a bunch of volunteers come and help us do that.
That's great.
You can come. Of course, we're going to vet you before you even get to the house, but you can come cut the grass for us. You can help with meals. Like if you're a cook and you want to help cook once a month or twice a month, and you can say, hey, I'll do dinner on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
That's great.
That would be amazing.
We can
just meet you, pick it up, or if we vetted you, you can come to the house and deliver it, or you can come and do a Bible study. Or we also have a jail outreach where we serve women that are incarcerated. A lot of women that are incarcerated have been sexually exploited or trafficked. Some of them are being sexually and trafficked, but they don't realize it. So we're trying to pour into them and reach them on a level that no one else has. So they are desperate to be heard. They're hungry for the attention and the love. And so anybody can help with that as well.
Okay. So I hope that you have gained something with our chat here with Cindy. We could talk forever, but we've got Cindy hopping on Wave News here at 12:15 today to talk with Josh Ninke also about this so she can continue. We've got her on a busy schedule here today. So I hope that you all gain something again. If you can help, please click on the link in this feed here and reach out. And it's good to know. All this stuff is good to know. And thank you for talking about this.
Thank you. I could talk about it all day long. I don't think people can hear. I don't think they're listening, but I want to keep pushing it out there because it needs to be heard.
Well, thank you for your time. All right. I'm Myra Ansari with Cindy Crawford from Sycamore Farm, Kentucky. Have a great day.
Awesome.